In today's video, you're going to learn how to make this bike disappear on Photoshop. So we're going to use a tool called the Vanishing Point tool. And this is much better than the usual tools that people use like the clone stamp tool or the content aware tool. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to show you all of those tools in today's video and how to use the Vanishing Point tool with Photoshop. So stick around until the end of the video to learn all of the steps from start to finish. So if you like these types of videos, make sure you hit that like button and hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload my next video. And if you have any questions or any other video requests, make sure you comment down below, and you can also find all the images that we'll use in today's video in the description below. So let's get started. So let's right click and copy this image, and let's go into Photoshop and click on Create New. So Photoshop will automatically pick up the width and the height of the image you just copied, but if it doesn't, just put in 1200 pixels by 800 and leave the resolution at 72 pixels per inch and leave the color mode on RGB 8-bit. And I'm going to leave the background content as white, and don't worry about the advanced options, just leave that as it is. So click on Create, and then if you press Ctrl V or Command V if you're in a Mac, it will paste the image. You can also go Edit and click on Paste right here. So the first thing I want to explain is why you shouldn't use the normal tools we would usually use to make this bike disappear. So let's say there's some kind of unwanted object in an image. We usually use a tool called the Stamp tool or another newer tool called the Content Aware tool. So let me show you the Content Aware tool first. And if you want to skip ahead to what I actually do, then I'll leave a timestamp in the description below. Just click on that timestamp and it'll take you there. So let's use the Content Aware tool, and I'll show you why this won't work. So the Content Aware tool, you simply just highlight a part of the image that you want to get rid of, like this bike. Then you go to Edit, click on Fill, and then you choose Content Aware right here, and then click on OK. So now you can see it doesn't really work well. That's because there's just too many things going on in this image. There's some bricks right here, there's a pathway here, there's so many different colors. If it's a simple image with a simple background, then the Content Aware tool will work well. But it's just not intelligent enough to pick up that there's a brick wall right here, there's a pathway right here, so it just doesn't work well. There's another tool called the Stamp tool, so let me just undo that. So that's this right here. So what the Stamp tool does is, let me just make the brush a little bit smaller. So you can make the brush smaller by decreasing it right here at the top. And what the Stamp tool does is, it's this right here. And it's called the Clone Stamp tool. So you simply choose a part of the image, like maybe this part right here. And you press and hold Alt or the Option key if you're on a Mac. And you'll see the cursor change into like a target. So you want to target this part of the image. You're going to replace this part of the image, and then you can just keep going. So you can see it's taking this part of the image and it's replacing it here, and you can also do that here. So you can take this part and you can just kind of get rid of the bottom part of the bike just like that. So this works well to a certain extent. You can already see it's working pretty well, but it doesn't work well on an image like this. It's got a lot of perspective in this image. And it's kind of, let's say you take a part of this image and you put it over here. This part of the image is bigger than this part of the image. So all the perspective kind of gets warped. So it's not that accurate. So let me undo all of that. And I'm going to show you what I usually use. It's called the Vanishing Point tool. So if you go to Filter and then click on Vanishing Point, you'll see this window pop up. But before we get started with this, you need to work with the Layers panel. So if you don't see this Layers panel right here, just go to Windows and click on Layers right here. So make sure you have the layer, and we're also going to rename this to Image. So I usually like to name all of my layers just to keep everything organized. So let's go choose the image layer, and let's go into Filter and choose Vanishing Point again. So this is the window we're going to work with. And what this does is it helps us work with images with a lot of perspectives. So there's obviously like a 1-point perspective in this image. So we're going to use this tool right here called the Create Plane tool. So click on that, and what we're going to do is click on maybe this part of the brick right here. Actually, I'll start over here. I'm going to choose this part of the brick, and I'm going to draw a line and click right here, and then maybe take it all the way back here. Actually, I don't need to take it that far, maybe about here. And then I'm going to try to align it with the brick lines and just put it right here. So try to be as accurate as possible. There we go. So now you see this little plane right here, and you see all these little grids as well. So you can increase those grids and you can decrease it. So depending on, let's say if there's a lot of tiles in the image that you're working with, then you can increase the planes. If there's, in this case, there's a lot of bricks, so I think that amount of bricks is pretty good. So now we can, now this is a lot easier to work with. There's a few things we can do now. So if you choose the Marquee tool right here, and what I can do is I can select this part of the image, and you can see when I make this selection, it goes with the perspective. It didn't make a square selection, it actually made a selection with that perspective that we just created. So it's a really useful tool. So let me just undo that, and I'm going to create a selection of this part of the image right here. So I'm going to be, again, try to be as accurate as possible, try to get those lines. There we go. So now I have this selection. So what I want to do is copy this part and move it over here. So we're going to do that by pressing and holding the Alt key, and that's Option key if you're on a Mac. So just click and hold. I'm just going to move that down. And if you hold Shift, it'll keep everything straight as well. So just move that down just like that. So that looks pretty good. And again, we can do that again by just, if you press and hold Alt again and press and keep holding Shift, if you move it along, it gets smaller when we move it along further that way, so further towards the perspective. So now that's a much more accurate, so it's much more easier to work with now. So I'm going to undo that and actually take this part of the image now. So maybe copy this part of the brick, and I'm going to press and hold Alt, and let's bring it over here. There we go, that looks pretty good. And let's also maybe take this part of the brick line and just bring it down a little bit, maybe around here. So now you can see it's already starting to look pretty good. So the bike's already starting to kind of disappear, and this is a lot easier to work with than the stamp tool or the Marquee tool. And it's getting a bit distorted around here, so let me just work on that a bit more. Maybe what we could do is even take maybe this part of the brick, but that might be a bit too detailed. But let's keep working with this, see what we can do. So let's maybe take this right here, and towards the end of the video we'll work on more things like making all of these edges a bit more better. So we'll don't worry about that for now. So let's move this down and maybe move it along here. So I think that looks good there. And I'll also take maybe, actually I'll move this over here, and I'll take this part of the image again, and I'll move, whoops. So don't forget to hold Alt. So what I did there is I forgot to press Alt, so just move the selection. But if you press Alt, it will move whatever is in the image along with the selection. So let's put that right here. And I think that looks good so far, but that little edge there, we can adjust that later on with the stamp tool. And let's, so over here, I think now it looks good so far, and it doesn't look good at all for an end product, but it actually looks good so far. And now what you can do is for these little tiny details right here, you can just use the clone stamp tool. So just like before, you just press and hold Alt, and you click on which part of the image that you want to copy, maybe this part here, and then you can just paste that in right here. And again, this actually keeps the perspective, so it doesn't warp the perspective. And so right now I'm kind of going over, so you can see that green crosshair right here. You can see it's kind of going over that line. So when it goes over that line, it doesn't know that it needs to copy from here. So that's why you have this little edge. So you have to kind of be careful here. So you have to maybe copy it from here, maybe bring it over here. You can just keep doing that over and over again. So these are just for the smaller details. And maybe let's take parts of it from here. So that's a little bit warped there, but we'll work on that. And we'll also get rid of this top part. So maybe we'll put in a line right here. Also work on this part right here as well. Looks good. And right here, let's keep going too. There we go. So that looks good so far. Just a little bit more details to work with. So what I'm going to do is just speed up the video a little bit and just kind of get rid of those edges here and there. So this looks good so far, but there's one more thing you can also try. So there's this, what I want to try is take this part of the image and try putting it up here. So if you want to try something like that, all you need to do is go back to the plane tool and you can kind of expand it. So you can see it already kind of picks up, it kind of goes sideways here. So you can kind of move it there. Then what you can do is you can copy it just like before. So maybe copy this part and then you can press the Alt key and we can move it right here. But the only problem is the lighting. But this depends on the type of image that you're working with. So the lighting might be a bit different to you, so it might actually work well for your image that you're working with. But this is something that you can do and you should use if it works well with the image that you're using. So it's very useful. And you can also do that with this part of the image right here as well, but I'm pretty sure the lighting is also different here, so it wouldn't work well. So let's undo all of that. And that looks good so far. So I'm going to hit OK here. And you can see, so this looks much better now. So there are some parts of the image that we need to work with, but we'll work on those small details later on. So I want to do this again for this bottom part here. So let's do that by going into the filter, vanishing point again. And I'm going to choose another panel. This time we'll do the bottom part right here. This one will be a bit easier because it's easier to draw up this line, and you can just point that right here. And just like before, I'm just going to use the stamp tool this time because I think that will be just easier. And I'm just going to move all of this right here. Oops. And again, just be careful with these lines. So make sure all those lines are actually aligning well. And also the lighting needs to be just right as well. So that looks good. Actually, I like that little line there. That makes it look a bit more realistic. And I'm going to make this a bit better. Make this part a bit lighter, I guess. There we go. So that looks good. Now let's click on OK and let's see what all of this looks like. So that looks good so far. And another thing I forgot to do, what I usually do is I'll go back to the image and I'll press copy again. So I usually make another copy of the image just in case if we make a mistake, we can just go back to the original image. So let me just paste this on top and let me just rename this to original image. So I should have done this at the start, so I actually forgot to do this. So I usually just and also you can kind of look back on, you know, how it looked before and how it looks now. So that's what we've got so far. So let's keep going here. So these other parts are going to be a bit more tricky. So let's zoom out a little bit, and also we need to work on this part a bit more as well with the stamp tool, and we'll do that soon. Let's zoom out and let's also create another vanishing point. So let's go back to the image layer. Let's click on filter, vanishing point, and I want to zoom in a bit more now. And let's use the Marquee Tool again, and let's just try doing the same thing. And we're going to just move that down, make sure it's all aligned, and let's also just move it back up this way a little bit. There we go. Let's also do that right here. So let's move that down here, and I think that looks a bit off, but maybe we can move it down a little bit more. So that perspective just didn't work there, so I'm gonna hit delete on this one, and I just need to fill up this part right here. So we can maybe do that by maybe pressing it here and just moving it down. So I think that fits in just there. Now these parts are going to be a little bit tricky. It requires a bit more attention to detail, but I'm not going to focus too much on the details for now. I just want to focus on the general parts of the bike. So you can see there's a lot going on over here, so it's going to be a bit harder to get rid of this part of the bike, but it won't be too hard. So we can still go into image, go into filter, click on vanishing point again, and I'll zoom in a bit more again, and I'm just going to use the clone stamp tool to get rid of this part. So let's start by clicking on the clone stamp tool, and let's click on this part of the image, and I'll make the brush a little bit bigger. And you can just click down, down, so I'll go up to there, and I'll stop about here. And I don't want to distort this image too much. You can see like the edges are kind of getting a bit distorted. So this part will be a little bit harder, and I need to make sure that the perspective is right. There we go. That's perfect. So I think that looks pretty good there. Now let's do the bricks right here as well. So I'm going to click this part of the brick. Let's take it from here. That looks good. Let's also get rid of those little tiny edges around here. So that looks good there. And let's move down now. Let's also just do the bricks over here as well. So I'm going to take the bricks from here, and actually I'll take it from here, and I'll just start from here, and I'll just move it down. So I'm just simply clicking and click here, and so it's taking this and it's putting it over here. So that looks really good. So all the way down, it looks really nice. So let's click on this part of the image, and let's also do this little light butter colored wall part right here as well. So let's just click that all the way down. You can also just press and hold shift and just draw all the way down, but that sometimes distorts it. So, but let's just try it out anyway. So let's press and hold, click right here, press and hold Alt or Option key on the Mac. Just click and hold, and let's just draw all the way down. So I don't think that looks too bad. So that actually worked pretty well there. So now let's click on this part of the image. So that's press and hold Alt or Option key. We're going to take this part and put it over here. So it looks really nice. That looks good. Perfect. And let's also take this part and let's move it up here. And let's also take this part here. So that looks nice. So now let's take this and get rid of that last little tiny bits right around here. And let's maybe also get rid of this. Nice. So now let's zoom out and let's see what all of this looks like. So that looks really good so far. We also need to get rid of some of these edges around here, but that looks good so far. So let's hit OK. So it saves all of that. So this is what we had before. It's pretty much almost completely gone. So now let's get rid of this little line right here, so that just doesn't look right. So let's click on Filter, Vanishing Point, and I'm going to create another panel. So maybe I'll start from here, and I'll draw a line all the way out to maybe just about here. And I just want to work on this little edge right here. So that looks a bit off. So if you want to change the perspective a bit, you can just kind of slightly adjust it just like that. There we go. So I think that looks a bit more accurate now. So let's just choose the clone stamp tool, and I'm gonna adjust the hardness of this brush. So the clone stamp tool. So watch what happens when I do it now. So if I click on this part and I put it over here, the edges are quite hard. So you can decrease the hardness of the edge by just decreasing it all the way to 0. Now if I click on this part of the image, or maybe around here, you can see the edges are a bit more, it's not as hard. So if I make the brush a bit bigger, you can see it a bit more. So you can see it's a bit more feathered. So it's not like a line, just like a random line going through the image. So maybe I'll do that here, right here as well. So, and also this looks a bit repetitive, so maybe I'll take something from here and I'll put it right here. So let's zoom out and let's see what that looks like. So I think it looks a bit better. So it looks like, darkened parts around here, and then it just gets lighter there. And I can make this a little bit more better. So maybe I'll make it brush a bit more bigger and maybe kind of fade it out a little bit more throughout. Now that looks much better, I think. So let's zoom out. Yep, so that's much better. So let's hit OK. So now that looks really good. So already we've got a nice effect, but we can make parts of the image better. So we're going to do that simply just using the normal stamp tool, and we can just use that without the vanishing point now. So this is what I usually do. So I will make the brush a bit smaller, and maybe I'll take this part of the image and just kind of get those edges right. There we go. This part of the image, maybe get this edge right, and you can see the perspective is a bit off here, so you might have to kind of adjust the change up the image that you used. So maybe you need to go back and maybe take a part of this image and move it back. So maybe let's try that, and let's fix vanishing point. And so this, it's a bit distorted right there, so what I'll do is maybe select this part of the image. And I apologize if you guys hear the cars going in the background. It's quite noisy today. And let's try to place this just right. Maybe around there is good. It's still a bit off. So I think it fixed this part, but this part is a bit needs a bit more fixing. So you can also just make this a little bit bigger if you wanted to as well. And you can we are kind of distorting, cheating a little bit here, but we can just do that just a little bit just to get it right. There we go. So it looks good there. So it does look a bit off. So let me zoom out a bit. Can't really see it much, but it's still, if you zoom in, you can actually see it. So what we could do here is, let's try it again. So vanishing point. So this is what you do. You have to just keep playing around with it more and more until you get it just right. So I might just use the clone stamp tool and just get rid of those edges there. So maybe just making it a bit blurry might make it better. There we go. So I think that might actually work out a little bit more. So I'll take this part of the image and just place it right here. And I'll make the brush a little bit smaller. And maybe take this part of the image and I'll place it right here. One here as well. One there. And maybe one here as well. So that looks much better now. So just keep testing it out until you get the image just right. So let's hit OK. Let's zoom out. There we go. So we just made this bike right here completely disappear. So that's how you use the vanishing point tool on Photoshop. So if you have any questions, make sure you guys comment down below, and make sure you also hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and in the comments below, let me know any other video requests you have. I don't mind making other videos on Adobe Illustrator, After Effects, Adobe Premiere, maybe even Blender. So let me know in the comments below. So I'll see you in the next video.